I'm in search of conversation guests. If you are interested or know someone that might be interested, please contact me directly. Thank you.
Just be upfront. Essentially, it feels like a form of it's like subversive proselytizing or something. You know what I mean? Like you said, like trying to convert people without being upfront with what you're like. I guess in a way. So I'll back up and say, yeah. I actually know people who really like him. I find he's like very, again, another very compelling person intellectually. He's obviously very thought out, and he raises like interesting points. A lot of times I feel like it's like such basic shit, like take care of yourself. I'm like, what's like so revolutionary about what this guy's saying? I don't know. Like it just seems like he's saying like, I watched the videos like stand up straight or some book he wrote or the 10 rules he wrote, and I was like, okay, this dude is making millions of dollars for telling people to stand up straight. Like, what's this about? But I do understand that it seems almost disingenuous that like the fundamental core of your beliefs is based around a specific religion, and that religion has, I guess there's so much depth to it. You know what I mean? But obviously, there's like a historical aspect. That's like one of that's one of the challenges with the religion is that they include what they perceive as historical facts, and then it makes it hard. It's like, it's hard to take value away from this whole thing because you're telling me some shit happened. I can't buy into that part of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like disingenuous that this dude is challenging all these other ideas. Fine, but like at the core of the base of his pyramid at the low level is something many people would be like, that's not like a modern approach necessarily. You know what I mean? It's like a. Yeah, I don't know. I do wonder sometimes though if like I was raised like I was raised in like two different religions, like Christianity and Islam, and I guess like culturally I take a lot from both because like you really don't get away with it when your family is like from you're not. They ain't gonna end up like you do. There's still people who are like they're 100% about it, and I totally you love them and you live with it, and it's just like
religion is I forget the word. I mean, you take the whole family, extended friends. If you say anything bad about the religion, it affects the whole freaking that ecosystem. Oh my god! You're almost throwing away your family lineage almost.
Yeah. You're also throwing away like your family life.
Yeah.
That's why I think I don't know necessarily millennials, but people who don't feel a particular affinity for a certain very like specific type of dogma, like call it like a Christianity or an Islam or a Judaism, it's like you like almost never want to have that conversation with your family. But it's funny because to them, it's only natural to have those feelings, and they'll be like, hey, like make sure you pray about it, and you're like, okay. I'll do my best. I will be working towards the goal. It's like, so it's like. But I guess the point I was getting at is that I think we all have. Most people have a certain amount of exposure to that. So it's kind of like I don't know. I guess I feel like an affinity for religious people because I'm like, well, if he believes that in his heart of heart. Like, I mean, thankfully we live in like a relatively free society where you can have those views and there's not some state-sponsored religion. So in a way, it's like I'm like, he's just another guy trying to do what he thinks is right. But you're right in that there is a compensatory component to it. Like the dude is getting paid. You know what I mean? It's not like someone in like your family is telling you like, well, have you prayed on it? You know what I mean? And they're trying, it's like a goodwill thing. Like literally the dude, like I said, is getting paid millions of dollars to write a book to tell kids to stand up straight. When what he really wants to tell them is read the Bible. Like how could you have a book called 10 Rules for Life? Now remember, how could you have a book called 10 Rules for Life? Like, don't you mean the 10 Commandments, bro? I guess actually that kind of is credibility to your point or evidence in that how could you be someone who is so theologically inspired by Christianity and then write a book called 10 Rules for Life? And I don't know if, I guess I haven't read the book. I don't know if he includes stuff about the Bible. Don't you think we would have heard though? It's like Jordan Peterson's in his book. He says read the Bible. You know what I mean? That seems disingenuous.
Have you heard of Sam Harris?
Yeah, I watched his interview actually on Eric Weinstein or whatever. I thought he was so boring.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
but like everyone says he's like a super smart guy. I'm sure he is. He's, I don't know. You can tell me about him.
I love him. I love that he seems so able to articulate, to break things down to simply, is it good or bad? The thing that I kind of dislike, his efforts and his ability to speak that, I feel like his efforts are going towards, a lot of his talk is kind of like, he went through some time where a lot of it was anti-Muslim, not so much, he was just saying the religion has a foundation that doesn't play well with other people, with other religions.
Yeah, there's a clash of civilizations, 100%.
And
that's all about it.
So that's he breaks it down really well, and I think he proves his point very well. But, and I'm like, Sam, I think you're such your brain is so good at thinking things through and picking that out. But to pick on, how would I word it? To pick on Muslims, I feel like, he's not picking on. He's just saying that it's one of the I feel like he's saying it's one of the toughest religions to mix well with the world. So therefore, it's not good for the world per se.
Yeah.
Now, it's a heavy statement. It's a heavy thing.
No kidding.
But I feel like his brain could be used for better things. Like maybe use your brain and go towards government. Like work with Andrew Yang and break down the good and bad of certain things in society.
Focus, so you're saying it sounds like he has a very like ethical mind.
Super ethical.
Yeah, that's what we need in this world.
No, I love him for that, but I think so past the Muslim thing, which was like, it seemed like I don't know why a lot of his interviews it went into the Muslim topics. He had a debate with Jordan Peterson. And I feel...
Oh, they're like... obviously they're on different sides?
So Jordan Peterson... Sam Harris is trying to say towards Jordan... Sam Harris is trying to say, can you just say that you have your thoughts in religion and that is a bias to everything that you think about? And Jordan's like, well, that shouldn't be a negative point on me. Or he totally dodges the bullet. He doesn't even say that. He's like, well, if you're going to say that, he's dodging like Neo from the Matrix. He's like, if you're going to say that, then you're saying all Christians are wrong or something. Like Sam Harris is just saying like, well,
it's like misdirecting basically.
Yeah. So Sam Harris is saying, well, it should be a scientific approach to everything. If you're trying to prove a point, there needs to be a way to validate or disprove it, and everyone has to be able to test it thoroughly.
Yeah. Like essentially, like I feel like we're losing these ideas, like the ideas of the Enlightenment, which is that, you know what I mean, like Robespierre and all those. Wait, was he in the Enlightenment? I think he was, right? I'm not acting like I know a lot about the Enlightenment. You watch a few YouTube videos, it's been a while. But, the whole idea that, like you're saying, and like he was saying, basically, like the merits of the ideas, you know what I mean? Like the Enlightenment was like, we had all these friggin' wars in Europe where people brutally slaughtered each other. We invaded the Holy Land and slaughtered people there, and they slaughtered us back. The Ottomans, friggin' took over Spain. All this bloodshed. Then people came out of that and kind of sobered up from that bloodlust. They were like, maybe we could take religion out of it since this has a faith component. You know what I mean? Like when we make our decisions, let's agree that we each have differing beliefs that one or the other might think is subjective. So we have to focus on something more concrete. So it seems like, I'm not too familiar with him, but it sounds like he's advocating some form of Enlightenment thinking or something that's inspired by that.
Yeah.
Is he an atheist or what is his?
He's atheist.
Oh, he is. Okay.
As far as I understand.
Is he? Because I remember. I do remember seeing something or like where he was kind of expressing like he tries to do like morality without the God. Is what it is basically. Okay. See, but that's like ethics though. That like the one thing that's kind of frustrating is about humans is like, how do you bootstrap morality? Like what's like the startup process for morality? It seems like a lot of times like fear is like the most basic fundamental human emotion. So you can challenge people through fear, and that could come in the form of like a super deity or something like that. But when we start to those value systems come into question, then how do you bootstrap the morality? Like how do you tell someone be good for goodness sake? Because then it becomes subjective.
Yeah, and if you don't have religion, a lot of I think what Jordan Peterson would say, he's like, well, if you don't believe in something, he doesn't say religion. He says, if you don't believe in something, then the universe, if it means nothing, then why would you do anything good? That's not what he says. I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean? Like,
it's like
you should just have morality as a person. Like, if I know I could help someone, I probably should. If it doesn't cost me too much, I should just help them out of good human nature.
Yeah,
if we don't do that, then the world is gonna burn in hell anyway. Or burn in a hell that's
look where we're at.
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting is there was a book written a while ago called Sapiens, and it was like it seemed like it got like a lot of press and like NPR and like a bunch of kind of like lamestream so-called liberal institute. They like champion this book for this week or whatever, and I had only read like an excerpt of it, but because my interest was piqued, and I thought the author raised a really interesting point in the book, which is essentially like when we're living in a world with so much so much virtualness, like such a high level of virtual interaction, you know what I mean? Where it's like, everything is on a screen, or it's abstract, it's conceptual, yet it's concrete. Like you can't touch it, but you can feel it. So it's like it's really powerful. Like, how do you know what's real? And one of the ways that and so here's what he was saying is that the way to figure out what's real and what matters or what is like substantial is, does the thing suffer? So it's like a lot of time, I'll give you an example, which I think about this all the time, like this constant financialization of the economy, like finance and stuff, all these sort of services didn't used to be such a big part of the economy. Now they're a huge part of the economy. We sold all our jobs to China, we sold all our manufacturing, and we replaced it with a bunch of financializations, which is fine. It's like, whoa, GDP is super high, but it's like, what about in real practical terms? You know what I mean? Like, how do people feel? Do they feel good? It seems like a lot of people feel really frustrated with the current economic system, whereas a small group of people, or a substantial amount, but certainly not there's not a fair access or an equal access to these sort of the value that these financial services provide. But we place so much emphasis like on the stock market and all these sort of financializations, these abstractions, that we ignore like the suffering of human beings. So it's like, it goes back to the point that this author is making in this passage I read, where he was describing, like, how do we know it's real when we're so focused on like the stock market, like, or what's the Dow Jones, or like the Dow Jones Industrial, which is like an abstraction on top of an abstraction, you know what I mean? So you have like stocks, where are they trading? Let's pick a basket of stocks. So now we've created another layer of abstraction. Then let's take that basket of stocks and we'll create an exchange traded fund, which is yet another layer of abstraction. So now we've gone from having a real company to a stock, to an indices, to a financial product based on an indices, and then let's have like a default financial product on like this ETF, you know what I mean? So it's like, holy cow, dude, we're like 4 layers away from like the company that sells like toys, you know what I mean? And we'll focus so much on like, what is the value of my ETF doing, but we will not focus on like, what is the quality of like the employees, the people's lives, you know what I mean? So it's really interesting in that book where he talks about how do you identify what's real and what's not. It's through suffering. Like, what is suffering? We should probably pay attention to those things a reasonable amount, or dedicate some resources to those instead of the financial stuff. And I guess that's like one of the ways we can try to bootstrap morality or something without like a sort of supernatural force or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, or Muhammad. I mean, yeah. What was Buddha's deal? He's not supernatural, right? He was just like a good guy.
I don't even know. Liem's actually Buddhist. So.
I saw you got a little Buddha, or a little fat guy. He's over there in the. No, he's in the other room. In the living room.
That was actually from. So did I ever tell you? Me and Emmett, we opened a Bikini coffee shop in San Diego. Did I tell you about that?
You did, yeah. Don't tell wifey.
No, she knows.
All right.
We had a bunch of Buddhas everywhere.
Oh, really?
Like Buddhas, like anywhere from ranging from this size to about, probably that one was maybe probably about the biggest one.
Really?
Yeah.
So you just got like the legacy of like the Bikini car.
Yeah. Between
all these fat little men.
The Buddhas, and then we have one can opener that's an industrial can opener.
Are they for opening the number 10 cans or whatever? Do you know what that standard is, number 10? It's like, It's basically, dude. I'm not gonna lie. I've been getting a little bit into doomsday prepping, given the current sort of environment.
Yeah.
And I learned so much, dude. And like they have these, the number 10 cans are basically like, that's basically like bulk cans.
Yeah, the big like
big honking ones.
Like a gallon and a half.
Maybe? Yeah, exactly. Those are called number 10 cans.
Okay,
and like when you go to, it's really interesting along the lines of religion and the way that religion will drive people to certain things that seem like, I don't want to say unethical, but they seem like not rational per se in a modern way, but they end up being helpful, is that getting into like sort of doomsday prepping and like other stuff and just learning about it. Like I haven't really invested heavily, but learning about it, I found out that the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, have like one of the best operations for like canned foods and number 10 cans, like the type of can that you would use with that big old can opener.
Yeah.
And the reason is because like a lot of religion, they have like a doomsday sort of prophecy. And because of that, I believe in their scripture, it says that you have to always prepare. Like it's like a different level of vigilance than other religions, like Abrahamic religions. I don't know about Buddhism and all that stuff, honestly. But so like all like the Judaism, the Christianity, the Muslim, it's like a higher level of vigilance. And it seems like almost like over the top if you're not like involved in that world. But it's so interesting though, because they have this entire culture, like a lot of prepper culture, I'm realizing, is like it's also like Mormon culture. Like a lot of, like you ever see these people and they're like super prepped out and stuff, and like they've got like all their bug out like vehicles and all that
you
stuff.
You probably can't see it there. There's 10 like 5-gallon blue water jugs over there.
You
probably can't see
dude,
it,
I'm into it. Okay.
But I have a friend who's totally a prepper. Like him and his wife.
It's cool, honestly. You just blow a lot of money. It's a sucky thing.
I think they have like 10 or 20 of those 5-gallon things that they
really?
They even bought the ones that collapse so that they could store it. I don't know what other things that they have planned, but it's pretty. I understand some of it, and there's others. A lot of it seems overboard, but I don't know. I don't know where the right is, because I mean, someone sent me an article. Oscar sent me an article yesterday where they had like this the cycle of civilizations or nations, and they're showing
like at the end.
So the cycle is new government, prosperity, debt. Printing, I think printing of money, printing of money,
financialization, like we were talking about the great financialization abstraction,
and then over printing of money, inflation, civil war, unrest, and then new government. They showed, so if like new government's on this side, and then like the prosperity's up here, like China's here, and then America's over here where we're printing money. We're on this, according to their article, they're like, we're pretty close to civil war.
Well, I mean, it's like, I feel like, unfortunately, I hear that a lot, like the end of empire and all these sort of things. Like, it's really interesting, because I was actually watching this video last night, and it was talking about the supply of money. Like essentially, like you can think of it, it's kind of like now you're getting like financial jargon and blah blah blah, but like M2, so like M2 has like increased by 50% or doubled or something like in the last like 6 months. That's like an insane amount of like money sloshing around in the economy. But the other thing though is that we actually do have like, we do have a pretty vibrant, dynamic economy. A lot of times, I mean, what I have observed anecdotally, it's not like I've dug into data, and I'm by no means like subject matter expert, but a lot of times those collapses based around the hyperinflation that comes from printing money and all that sort of stuff comes from economies that are really tenuous to begin with. And a lot of times they depend on like commodities and like natural resources. So like a lot of times you see it in like South American countries and stuff where like they're almost 100% fueled by oil exports, or same thing in the Middle East, like a place like Tunisia or blah, blah, blah like that. I don't know if that case was specific to Tunisia, but I know during the Arab Spring, there was like dealing with major issues of like hyperinflation and the government like overpromising and under-delivering. People lose faith in the, like exactly what you're talking about. Like the government like becomes corrupt. People lose faith in it. The government tries to pay everyone off, but there's way too much money. There's nothing actually underlying it. The economy that was already fragile now collapses because, you know, all the aforementioned, and then it degrades into civil war, which is what you saw like essentially in the Middle East and stuff. So it's interesting, but I just hear that so much. So it's so funny, like, going back to like the Momos and stuff, the Mormons, like those people are prepared, dude. They're 100% prepared because they have they have a cultural affinity for doomsday prepping. So a lot of like doomsday prepper culture, like they do like these, they do like trade shows and, go down to the gun show, like go down to the prepper show, and they show you like, hey, you can like purify 1,000 gallons of water with only 1 tablet of chlorine. Like the big road shows and the convention comes to town. A lot of it is like Mormons, and it's dominated by Mormons, and it's so interesting. So the Mormons, there's a great documentary done with like American Experience. Do you know what that is? Like PBS? It's really cool stuff. So it's like PBS, it's American Experience, and which is a show working with another show, also PBS based. But they did a documentary called Mormons, and it's basically about the history of the Mormons and stuff. And they talk a lot about that. That sort of, because of that faith-based connection from this like decree to be so oriented around like end times, that they have created so many like amazing things. Like it's almost like their devotion to something that to us, not being a believer in their faith, would seem like unnecessary, has propelled them to massive heights. And like they're gonna be okay. Like I'm not joking, dude. I feel like if this country falls apart, Mormons are gonna be fine because they have like developed like atom-proof like shelters, like atomic bomb-proof shelters. They are like very much like believe in like being well armed, and they also, which this isn't covered in the movie, but I've read this before. At one point, there was a thing called the Mormon War, which like you don't really hear about in history, but the Mormons went to war with like the federal government, and they held their own against the federal government for like many years. Yeah, so because they came out west, they founded like at least they were pioneers in like Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, like pretty much all of the West besides California. The Mormons like founded it. Like they founded the state of Nevada. They created like their own standing army, which is like equivalent to the size of the federal army. And they were in a war, and like the federal government couldn't like overthrow them. So eventually they just decided, like you learn in the documentary, that like, screw it, do you guys just want to become a state? You know what I mean? Because they're like, fuck, you can't beat them, join them. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how the Mormons are like, we can't keep fighting this war forever with the U.S. government. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they basically established like their sort of hegemony in like Utah and other parts of where they were founding. And so that's like, I mean, it's like mind blowing. And it's this whole part of American history you don't really hear about. Yeah. It's like super funny because like in America, we always like champion the rebel. You know what I mean? Like, that's like a big part of our culture. Like, fuck you, England. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to do it our way. But then we had this whole war going on, like, that was like contemporaneous with a bunch of other important things that you never hear about, which is like the Mormon War. Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I don't know what the meaning is there. It's just so interesting that we're like, we need to bootstrap morality or like human goodness with something besides like the supernatural or something. But then, like, you see these people, and I'm like, I don't know, dude. Their community is going to be like just fine. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's so weird.
How do you think the banks are going to do? So I think for the Mormons to take place, I think the government has to fail. For the government to fail, I think somewhere the banks are going to be there. And you spent a lot of time with the banks.
Yeah.
Where do you think that all comes into play?
It's really interesting. I mean, I think overall. There's this really funny quote from Chuck Schumer, who is I believe he's in the Senate. He's like the leadership in the Senate or whatever for the Dems. And I think he's just been like in the Beltway, that sort of Washington, D.C. area club for so long that not too many years ago, they were talking to him about the influence of the banks on the federal government. And his quote, which like blew me away, because I'm like, I was like, dude, you don't say the truth in Washington, D.C. Like, that's a faux pas. But he was like, what do you think about the banks? And his quote, like deadpan, was like, to be honest with you, like they own the place. I was like, holy cow, dude. Like, you just said it. You know what I mean? So it's, Yeah, it's really interesting. I think at this point, I think in many ways we have like a corporate state, which is I've heard that term. There's an author named Chris Hedges. He wrote a book which is really depressing called America: The Farewell Party. He used to be an author for the New York Times, and then he left because he was opposed to the Iraq War. And the New York Times is like, they act like they're all humanitarian, but they've like been in favor of every major conflict without fail for like, I can't even remember like the last like 7. So everyone that you can remember, the New York Times is like, let's go kill him. So Chris Hedges was against it. He's a Christian seminarian from Harvard, super well educated, and he was like, "This war in Iraq is bullshit. Don't do this." So he got forced out of the New York Times, and after that, he wrote a bunch of interesting books about like American fascism and stuff, and like evangelicals converting to fascism, like all this weird soup. Like this dude is like, I would check his stuff out because he's particularly. It seems like this dude has been ahead of the ball or has had a keen eye for these sort of dynamics that we're seeing play out right now, which is like untruth and untruth and absurdity of consequence and all this stuff where people can't accept the truth and developing their own new myths and all this sort of stuff. And he talks about in that book, The Farewell Party, America, The Farewell Party, he talks about like the corporate state, which I think is maybe the first time I had heard it, but it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's like what I call it is, I think of it as like the deep corporate state. So it's like this weird like cabal of like the banks especially like making money off the petrodollar and all this sort of financialization. And the people, again, us not really focusing on what matters, which is the suffering of people. And that, in many ways, that's driven, I think, by the banks. So, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, if you feel like we're being driven off a cliff, I think in many ways we're being driven off the cliff by the banks, or at least they're like this is what I think. I think they're putting gas in the tank, like legit. I think that they provide the capital, and they make money off all the auctions, the treasury auctions. So they're putting gas in the tank to keep the sort of war machine running. So in terms of how will the individuals fare, I think they'll be just fine. I think those people, they already own like safe houses in New Zealand. That's become like a really big thing for like really powerful people now, is to like buy, they have a property in New Zealand, they have a property in Montana. I guess the one thing I really worry about is that without real reform, the influence of these groups grows even greater. Like, I mean, if you think that they run things now, like, imagine what would happen if we lost a sort of democratic interface or a Republican, in the terms of like talking about government, not the political party, but like a Republican interface or mechanism. Like that's one of the things was it in Chris Hedges' book or somewhere that kind of made me think about, like, if we lose that interface, even though sometimes it feels like, the democracy is a sham, we have to be honest. Like if we lose that sham, what do we have left? Like you literally just have like really cruel people who are unaccountable in any way. You know what I mean? Like it's mm-hmm. like the other thing I've thought about. It's like totalitarian capitalism, basically, which sounds fucking awful. Okay, like kind of like China's model, to be honest.
It's a funky, almost chicken and egg thing, almost. Like I'm gonna take it into. So if you have the corporate state, but to protect them, they need an army. The army is by the government. So as long as they're able to, because where my train of thought goes with that is, without an army to protect their stuff, then the masses of people will eventually get upset and overthrow them. But if you have an army to protect them, so they need to play well enough with the government and to not squeeze the people in too much. Yeah, they could squeeze.
Yeah.
Just not too much.
Yeah, right.
So it's a funky. I don't know how that all plays out.
So this is like really funny. So it kind of reminds me of that old saying. If you put a frog in boiling hot water, it'll jump out right away. But if you put a frog in cold water and turn the heat up slowly, it'll just sit there until it dies. I do wonder if, like, as the American people, we're not the frog. Because that's how it feels. And I know from my time in financial services, and I've heard this from other people, that like specifically at the larger institutions, like the too big to fail, the too stupid to manage companies, like they are heavily ingrained with the government. Like for instance, just one bank. Okay, so Citigroup. Like whenever there was like a government shutdown, and this was like across all the banks, they were like you would think. Well, let me put it this way. So, usually they hold up like Wall Street as like this sort of like kind of like these benevolent prophets of insight, right? Like this is what the market wants, and the smart money is going to go here and it's going to go there, and that's how we keep the dynamics going in this economy. Even though a lot of times that it's just volatility masquerading as dynamics. It's like it's so dynamic. It's like no, dude, this thing is just up and down. But there's a certain group of people who are always making money. Okay, but like when the government like shut down and all those sort of things, you would think that a company like the banks would be just fine, right? Because you would think they're so well capitalized, right? They have all this money, all the power. They're the champions of capitalism. This is the smart money. Why would they necessarily care if the government shuts down, right? But they freak out when the government shuts down. They hate it because they're so integrated from a service perspective with the government going both ways. Which I guess this kind of adds evidence to your point that the government or that the banks need the government to protect them. So much stuff that the banks do, particularly around just like originating loans and all these things, is tied in intimately with the government. They get tax information from the government. They validate social security numbers with the government. Anything relating to identification with ID. There's all this connectivity because of the Patriot Act and on and on and on, okay? Like the government and the bank, it's hard to see where one ends and one begins at certain layers. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is like at the very top and the very bottom, they almost seem like the same thing. Like if you look at the integration systems that a bank has with different sort of data sources, whether it's directly or through a vendor, like the government is somewhere in the supply chain for data. Somewhere the pipeline is coming straight from the government. Like that doesn't bother anyone? It doesn't bother anyone. Like on one hand, you facilitate services, right? That it's like, hey, this is more turnkey or seamless. Like, hey, that there's a value in that too. But like it doesn't, do you really think that what do you think the bank is doing with the data? Do you think the data passes through for the transaction and then they just dump the data? No, dude, they've got a whole dossier like that's comparable to what the government has on a bunch of people. It's like one of the big challenges of our time that these private companies have so much control. But what happens when a private institution has direct access to government databases where like their data is flowing? And then the other way it goes, again, to use Citigroup as an example, is that Citigroup has a working unit inside of it called the GTS, the Global Transaction System. The Global Transaction System, if it went down tomorrow, like people wouldn't get their Social Security, veterans wouldn't get paid, things like Medicaid and stuff, bills wouldn't get paid. Literally, they're the disbursement service for the U.S. federal government and other governments around the world. The city works with like Saudi Arabia and all these sort of companies. So what does that tell you? That like the United States federal government cannot operate if Citigroup goes under. Like literally, they don't have the infrastructure to send out money. They could that means all these people who are on disability or whatever, they would just starve. The government would have to figure out a way, which we all know they're not the most innovative like group, you know what I mean? They'd have to figure out a way to try to wire money. So they've outsourced, like it's like a basic thing they do. Like Jerry Yang talks, or
Andrew Yang.
Andrew, yeah, pardon me, yeah. He always talks about that, like what is the government good at? Like cutting a check. So it's like the government doesn't even cut the check, dude. They have the GTS do it for them. So I guess that's like one sort of concrete example of that kind of corporate state. I think it underlines what you're saying about like they have to play so nice with them. It's like they're on the same team, you know?
Yeah. To play nicely, I think there's also the politicians, the lobbyists, the corporate state and the lobbyists are kind of together.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, they just all have to play nicely, or else if they squeeze too tight, then there's a revolution. That's where I'm starting to think that the idea of if we go into a civil war, I actually kind of feel like it won't go into it. I don't know. That's just my current theory. My current theory is
I hope you're so right.
They're just squeezing, and they're just going to squeeze. Maybe humans are. I don't think we're more like frogs. I don't think we'll die. I think. A better analogy, I don't even know. It's just they're going to keep on squeezing. Humans are so adaptable to torture, concentration camps, North Korea, Hitler. Like people survive all that stuff. Not that it's great, but we survive. Humans survive. So unfortunately, we survive because then you got corporate interests with America's government. It's just a different type of Hitler and Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un and Hitler. It's just a different, it's an organized thing that's a bigger cult.
Yeah. It's like a different flavor of oppression, like systematic oppression. It's really interesting. One thing that, maybe, have you seen this a lot? I feel like I see a lot the China model. Like you read this a lot, like in like wherever, like if you read some like think piece or whatever, like if it's in like the Atlantic or something like that, they'll talk about like the China model, like the China surveillance model. Or if you read like in the Wall Street Journal, it'll say like the China economic model, and how like American companies, big business, are looking at the China model like maybe this could work for us. Like essentially like the business and the corporations like not being confrontational like they were in the past in America with like antitrust action, but actually looking at the government as like an ally, which is like weird because what hasn't always been, it's been on and off in America, but there has been a time in America, after the New Deal and antitrust where like the government actually was being combative with like big businesses. You know what I mean? Like that's what Trump did, which was kind of like mind blowing. Like if he wasn't such like a dickhead, you know what I mean? Maybe he could have made a difference, because I can't think of another person who's a politician in my lifetime who has like told companies like screw you. Like,
yeah.
Like it doesn't happen. Like they don't. He's like don't send those jobs to like Japan or wherever, Mexico or whatever, like some rubber plant or whatever the hell it is. Like I really cannot think in my lifetime a politician who's done that. And that's like so strange, because don't you think that's an agenda that would help the American people, that like every politician will be out there talking about that?
Yeah.
It's disturbing, right? Like, why is he the only one?
There's times where I think that I theorize he has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
So at times when, in those cases where it seems like he's actually telling a corporation to fuck off, I think maybe he just has some hidden agenda somewhere else that nobody knows about. That's the only thing. I don't know.
Let me ask this. Sometimes I think in a weird way, Trump is like the most democratic president we've had in a long time. And I mean that in the sense of that he is like so responsive to his voters, to the point of like almost being irresponsible. Like he, to his base or whatever. Like if there is some, but it's also like through the lens of narcissism. So, I gotta be honest, dude, like looking at 2016, I think the Republicans deserve a lot of credit for like letting their guy through. Like they let Trump get through. I'm sure they could have figured out some sort of tactic like the Democrats did to like stop Bernie, basically, but like they did it. So I mean, they deserve that. That's democracy. It's like people don't like him, they do like him, blah blah blah. But I'm saying democracy is like you vote, the party picks someone, and then that guy goes and runs.
Yeah.
The Democrats stopped Bernie like 2 times in a row. Like I think he could have beat Hillary, you know what I mean? But he never had the support, as I understand it, the support of the super delegates. So what does that tell you? Like they always try to hold up like the Democrats as like the sort of they're supposed to be the ones that have like liberal values, and the Republicans are conservative. But I'm like, I don't know, dude. The Republicans, give them credit, dude. They let their guy through, even though it was the one that like the leadership didn't want it. Somehow the guy broke through, which is like super, I don't know, it's just super democratic. It's such an interesting thought to me.
I don't, there's too many topics I don't know enough about. My theory on this, I don't know enough about it. I think he was just at the right time, at the right place. Meaning there's enough Americans just fed up with certain things, and he was just a person that spoke his mind that hit enough people's angst with America or the government.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it was just the right time at the right place. I think that's, I don't think it, I want to say it wasn't good for America to have him in, but who knows? I don't know. It's
hard.
Yeah. Or else we would have had Hillary, or we would, it's sort of, so many of the pieces with the corporate state, they pick the things anyways. The president's almost like a pawn at a lot of the time.
Yeah, he's like a figurehead.
Yeah. So that's where maybe it doesn't even matter that Trump was in. America would have been fucked anyways with whether it be Hillary, or even if like just blinked on his name. The old guy that Bernie.
Oh yeah.
If Bernie would have came in, he probably would have been blocked on a lot of things that he would want to do anyway. So I don't know. The corporate state probably would have gotten all the things that they wanted anyways, and people would have lost. I don't know. I don't know enough about the topic.
Yeah, it's funny though. I think about that again. Sometimes I think, I don't know, dude. It's like weird. I don't find Trump very likable because I don't like the chauvinist aspect, and like I don't mean like male chauvinist. You know, like a lot of times those two terms are like stitched together, like male and chauvinism. But I mean, like if you like Google chauvinism, like look at the definition, you know, it just kind of means like piggishly self-aggrandizing. So you could be like a female chauvinist, like, oh, women are the best at like swimming, women are the best at like dance, you know, everything, women are the best, and it doesn't matter, we're always going to be the best, you know what I mean? It's kind of like ethnocentrism, but like the way it's used a lot of times, like for the self. So instead of saying like, oh, I'm white people are the best, or oh, I'm black people are self, you're like, no, I'm the best. Like no matter what, I can't do anything wrong, and it's wrapped up with all that narcissism and stuff. But all that sort of chauvinist aspect of him, not necessarily the male chauvinist, maybe that's part of it too, but that aspect of it is just so like off-putting. I don't like that communication style and all that. But all those things aside, yeah, I do wonder again if, even though that sort of chauvinism that I think he displays inspires such negative rhetoric, like the rhetoric has gone down the toilet, holy cow. I do wonder though if like he wasn't sort of, he's like a stress test for the democracy, but also like a sign. I guess we're a Republican democracy, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think we discussed it earlier where he's not the problem, he's a symptom in the aspect of democracy.
Yeah.
I think that kind of all ties in there.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing that's like so obnoxious about kind of like corporate ding-dong media, you know what I mean? Like, they're always trying to act like, dude, Donald Trump is a guy who just like you said, he was just the right guy at the right time. Like, he walked into the room, he hit his marks, he's been a celebrity for a long time, he loves the media, he worked with the media his whole freaking career. Can you imagine if you or I had been working with the media for like 40 years or 30 years at such a high level?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. You think of like the skills you have from like whatever if you're an engineer, an analyst, a plumber, you do it for 30 years, you're going to have an appreciable level of expertise. This guy has been working at the highest levels of media since like the 70s in like the biggest media markets, like New York, US, everything, dude, at the highest levels. So like you said, the dude was the right guy at the right time, and he just walked up to the controls. That entire like big friendly death machine, that was built by a bunch of people before, you know what I mean? Like, it was built by a bunch of people that were supposed to like love and have adoration for like our supreme leaders, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's exactly like, what we're talking about, just like that dude is a symptom of a disease. He's not the disease, and it seems like the big friendly disease is like back in full force, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's frustrating, you know, because like, I don't know. Does that make sense that he seems like he was like a stress test in terms of like, like I guess to articulate it, it's like, can you uphold the values you claim are like what America, like can you deal with, it just seems like a lot of people couldn't deal with the fact that he became president. Like, they couldn't like accept that he became president, you know what I mean? Like, they wanted to, it seems like, I'll be honest with you, it seemed like a lot of forces wanted to circumvent the democratic process. Like, they didn't want him to become president. And then when he became president, it's like, it seemed like a lot of the things, like, oh, you know what's so interesting, actually? Have you ever seen like the Guccifer 2.0, like all like the independent InfoSec work done on like Guccifer and all that stuff? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's really interesting. We'll have to send you this link. It's pretty amazing stuff. But like, it seems like the independent InfoSec community, which is not the InfoSec community that is like, what is the one that they always reference? Crossfire or whatever they're called. There's basically a company that is of like questionable sort of origin that like the CIA always references, but these guys, like, no one heard of them before like 2016 or 2016 basically, but like the government is always using them to say like, oh, this happened with like Trump and the Russians, or this happened with blah 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 or whatever it is. And the independent infosec community has this thing called like the Guccifer 2.0 archives, where it looks at like all of the hack materials that came out and all this sort of stuff. And what like they concluded, and I've read some of it, it seems very high quality, is that essentially this was like a domestic hacker who hacked like Hillary Clinton's emails. They were on the west coast of the United States. So there was these sort of metadata things that you can do in terms of like the, obviously like checksums and all that stuff and all those kind of things, and the metadata and stuff. So it's just interesting that the way they explain it, which is much more articulate, it casts a lot of doubt on a lot of like what the CIA and all these other people, these stories they tell about like what happened with the 2016 election. So it was just like really interesting to see that there was like never any debate about any of those things. Like there often isn't. There was no technical details. Like we don't want to live up to our idea of democracy if the president is someone like we hate, basically. It's kind of ranty, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, he's just kind of like, he's just kind of like that stress test kind of character.
Yeah. What do you, switching gears, just the Trump politics is such a big thing. Switching gears.
It's draining.
From your years working, what do you feel is the kind of the best and or worst things that you've seen in your expertise, the things that you've worked through, whether IT-wise, banks, just in general?
Yeah, I think when we were talking earlier, I feel like from like when you're a geek, like problems are fun, even though like at the end of the day, you're like, dude, fuck this, I'm going home. Like, you beat the problem to death, but there is like, it's very rewarding. You know what I mean? So from like a technical perspective, that is like so challenging. And sometimes it's like really so tedious, but you get a lot of value out of it. I think the thing that we were talking about earlier is the thing that is most disturbing, which is like the level of fraud that goes into like providing like technical services. Well, like in finance, I mean, on so many different angles, there's fraud, systemic fraud. And then like,
did you happen to see that? I mean, I know you're talking about, you see it now as you're working with companies, but did you see it when you're working at a bank too, at the banks? Did you see, or were you more oblivious?
Yeah.
Or non-purview, not purview to it?
That one's hard because there are like, there's like NDA stuff that's like hard to communicate about.
Yeah, that's
I mean, there's like a reason all those like sort of NDAs exist. And I think a lot of people who are honest about what goes on in the financial services would say that they're at least disturbed by like a little bit of what goes on. So like something that is like totally unrelated to me, but it's just something that like, maybe people might be aware of if you like pay attention to quarterly earnings and all those, what is it called? The 10K file, like kind of like stock equity based stuff is like window dressing. So like window dressing is like basically like before like you have to do like quarterlies or whatever it is, or some form of like disclosure, you take all of the toxic stuff on your balance sheet and you move it off balance sheet through like some trick. You know what I mean? Like say there's like just some other firm that some high level person just happens to be an owner of, and it's like, hey dude, we're gonna like do a contract where you're going to take possession of these assets for the statutory minimum amount of time it takes for us to say that we don't own this anymore. And then after that period ends and the reporting is done, give it right back to us. So it's just like if I'm holding nuclear waste and it's like the nuclear waste inspectors come in, I'm like, dude, will you hold this for like 10 hours? And I'm like, okay. And then like the dude comes, I'm like, dude, everything is like solid clean in here. And then the inspector leaves, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna need that nuclear waste back. You know what I mean? And it's like, you can look it up. You know what I mean? It was never in like my area of expertise, but at the end of the day, that is something that happens. Banks are notorious for doing it. And like, there's the, in compliance and law and stuff, you talk about the letter of the law and then there's the spirit of the law. You know what I mean? Which is like, are we really fulfilling the kind of the conception with the core principle of what this law is founded on? And that is like one of the really funny ones, because I know, and I guess now that you know that I told you that means there has to be someone at the bank who that's their job. Like something is going on if you have people whose job it is just to take nuclear waste and throw it away for 10 days and be like, hey, give me that nuclear waste bag. Like, something is wrong if like the most powerful financial organizations in the history of the planet are like doing this as a business practice. You know what I mean? So I think that's, it's troubling to see people get taken advantage of, you know what I mean? And it seems like the higher the level, like the higher the scale, the more sort of like the people who are participating feel like it's a victimless crime. Does that make sense? Because it's strange. It's just like we were talking about earlier with that many levels of abstractions. Like this dude who, whatever, he's like a custodian of some sort or whatever his job. His job is to like take the crap off, bring the crap on. He's just looking at it like, dude, I'm just like working in Excel. Like he doesn't care, dude. You know what I mean? Maybe he hates his job or he loves his job, but he just does it and then it comes back. But he is not realizing that like he could be essentially perpetrating like a multi-billion-dollar fraud. And like people like with Bernie Madoff, like those people lost like their whole life savings, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, it was a lot of money. It was like they say it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in history or whatever. I'm sure actually that makes sense because I know a lot of his investors were like in for like 100, in for like 120. That's a crazy thing. A lot of those people. He was Jewish, and a lot of those people who trusted him with his money, they trusted him because they were Jewish, and he was Jewish. And like some of those people, they were like survivors of the Holocaust, dude. Like, oh my God, what sort of? But like, I don't know what sort of weird engine is in like the heart of like humans or something that like, if it's like if it's like, you know, if you give me $100,000 and I blow it and we're like person to person. Like, we're going to have to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to talk about it. You're going to beat me up or sue me. But it's like, if I take $100,000 from like 10,000 of you, I'm like, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? It's very disturbing. I don't know why that is.
It turns into like you're describing it. It's not personal. It's somehow because it's such, the law protects them. They're lawyers. I don't know.
It's weird. It's like, I guess it's kind of like that old saying, or I should know this from financial services. It's like if you own, you know, it's like if you owe the bank $100,000, like, I'm trying to remember. If you owe the bank $100,000, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank $100 million, you own the bank. Which is that like if you default on the loan, like the bank is fucked because they just lost like $100 million. You know what I mean? So it's that weird sort of dynamic where like as you pass through like different magnitudes of scale, the dynamic changes or inverts. So if like I owe you $100,000, like we were saying, it's like, oh, dude, you could be like on my ass, you know what I mean? Like, you know me, it's personal and stuff. But if I form like some sort of legal entity and I take $100,000 from you and 10,000 other people, well, now I've got 100,000 times 10,000 or whatever that is. I've got like $1 billion or something that I can use to fight you as like an individual with like lawsuits and all that. So now like by me perpetuating a fraud at a certain level, I've like, protected myself in some weird way.
So you, from the business fraud side, you're seeing it as you come in, you get hired as a consultant, the company that you're working on, you see the other people that the previous employee didn't do their shit, and the previous consultant, and they still charge a shitload of money. How much do you think nationally? I don't know. Is there a number that you could guess on how many millions of dollars or that?
$20 money just gone down the toilet. Oh man, I don't know, dude. I mean, I've seen, you know, I've just seen people literally, you know, hundreds of thousands. In banking, you see millions of dollars. Like, I mean, I don't know if you could put the number on it. It's really funny when you think about like, is there a way to optimize this? You know what I mean? Because like all this wealth it's not being optimized.
It's a waste. It's a waste.
You should take your money and throw it in the friggin' garbage can, dude, and then like we'll come around and pick it up after. Because like it's like this is literally what you see like all the time. I mean, I couldn't tell you what the number is. I am interested. I feel like you've worked in a lot more diverse sort of business requirements.
Yeah.
'Cause,
So I was a contractor to the Navy. I ended up
oh,
working.
I didn't know. That's sweet. Do you have a security clearance?
I did at that time.
Whoa, no way. You're special. That's cool.
Yeah. And then worked at a university.
Wow.
Then after the university, tried to do the Bikini coffee.
Yeah, that's like such a detour, dude.
Prior to that, I kind of got sick of the rat race here in America, so I just like sold all my belongings and I traveled to Australia for 4 months, Vietnam for 6 months, visited my dad in Houston, Texas for 4 months, and then so like a year and 2 months, I just fucked around.
Wait, when did I know that?
No, this was back 2009.
Oh, damn.
I fucked up. I fucked up in a lot of ways. I kind of fucked up my credit, but I was just sick of like the rat race, like going to work, working so hard, and then like at that time my salary was so much lower.
That's soul sucking.
Like being a programmer and still not being paid well. Like I was like, what the fuck is I can't. I'm not happy in this world here.
Yeah.
So I just fucked everything, sold everything, fucked up my credit, left to Vietnam and Australia.
That's dope.
So then Bikini coffee shop, that failed. Went to work at Cosmopolitan Casino and then worked at a HOA documentation, homeowners association documentation as a programmer, doing their paperwork or doing the back end programming for their paperwork.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty good range of things. But working at the military, I think that was so early in my career that I didn't really, I guess, connect a lot of the thoughts that I have nowadays. Because as you grow and you learn, meaning seeing there was a lot of politics, and I'm totally going on a tangent. I don't even know what I'm connecting to.
I love it.
When I was working there, we'd have our West Coast office trying to program stuff, and we had East Coast admirals and I'm trying to remember the titles. Admirals and what's below admiral?
Colonel?
Yeah,
I'm just guessing. I don't know that factually.
I forget. I don't think it was colonel, but
Sergeant Colonel.
Master Chief. What's above Master Chief? I think it's. But anyways, so you would get. Oh, I think it was a Master Chief. So we would get a high-ranking Master Chief, and then we're the technical side. We're the one building the software, and then they would come in via video conference, like, oh, we want you to design the database where the primary key is a text, is a string text of the ship. The ship hull will be the primary key. We're like, why do you care? The primary key is going to be on the back end. We're going to handle that. Because later on, so we had to, for whatever reason, that guy was so high ranking, we had to actually, our office had to say, okay, we'll do it.
What?
Guess what? Ships change hull. They change their crew and their hull. So when we get data flying in from the satellites, we're like, oh shit, we have to change the ship's data to this hole now. It was just a total fucking mess. So anyways, the politics. So I guess now that I look back and how fucked up politics and people in power that don't understand things and pushing agendas that they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. Wow.
I saw that. Holy shit. When you're talking about business fraud to some degree, I see it on the internal side of Cosmopolitan. They're the smallest big corporation that you could live in. Meaning, they have the CEO, CIO. They have the vice president IT, or at the time I forget. Was he vice president IT or whatever? You have all these directors. And normally a director is supposed to have like 20, 40 people below them.
No.
Each director had like maybe up to 5 people working below them. So I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why do we have all these titles and then each director has maybe 1 or 2 people working below them? What's the point of having a director?
Yeah, exactly.
So all this money was being wasted in all these positions. It was freaking nuts. In the IT department, I think we had, was it 6 directors? I want to say about 6 directors in the IT department. And we had probably 6 directors and probably only, I actually think at one point we had 35 worker bees. So Did I say 10 directors? So anyways, if it was 10 directors, was it 10 directors? And you only have 35 people. That's 3 people per director.
Yeah, it's such like a introspective journey to program, obviously. But I never had like a kind of like what you're describing, even though what you're describing is kind of like a goofy ass organizational structure, like a management structure. I never really had anyone that I could just even ask like other programmers or stuff like that. So this is kind of like an interesting topic. Do you think, how do you think that like affected your journey in terms of like programming? Like, were those directors like technical people? Like, did you feel like you could communicate with them and get like value or help? Like, did you just feel like me, or I'm just like, fuck it, I just need to read?
Let me actually connect this. I'm going to connect my answer to government. How fucked up politicians and government. I'm going to connect it. I started thinking like, what the fuck? These people are getting paid this much. I'm doing all the work. So maybe I need to cut corners. Maybe I need to start lying. Maybe I need to start to get further ahead, to get better pay, because at least if I'm gonna do the work, I might as well get better pay. So that's what my morality changed in those situations. Now, my morality towards those that I work with, I guess that didn't decompose. My morality on when dealing with higher upper management that didn't know what they're doing, I'm willing to lie to them to get my benefit.
See, but the one thing that's interesting though about programming, computer science, specifically for like a business, is that it's like a problem solution model in very general terms. And by that I mean like you have a problem and you need a solution. And as a programmer, specifically in that sort of environment where it's like a pretty concrete business model, it's not like super innovative, I don't think, to build like software for a hotel. Maybe it is, I don't know. But it's not like necessarily like crazy AI or something. A lot of the business requirements and the rules are written, so they're expecting a certain something and you can probably deliver that certain something. But there does come this point as an engineer where like you can't quite fake it anymore. Like, so you could cut corners and do all this to try to get like your quote unquote your way. But from a deliverable aspect, like the software that's actually going to be deployed, like it's got to work. You know what I mean? So it's like a strangely altruistic. Like it's kind of like the cynical thing to do is to finish the program correctly. You know what I mean? Because if you don't finish it, then you're going to be working even more hours for a job you don't like. You know what I mean?
I don't know if this answers your question. I think there was plenty of people that I worked with in that IT situation where I felt like they weren't worthy of their pay. But they were good at talking to directors and just schmoozers.
Hate them.
They played that game. Some of them I kind of don't think they knew. I think they are actually what they were doing. How would I explain? I feel like I'm a capable programmer, so I was producing APIs, I was producing software for the company, and I would go to meetings and push for my software to get more embedded into different departments. I would actually schedule meetings with other departments, so I was actually pretty fucking gung-ho.
Yeah, you're leading it.
There was times where I knew certain directors, like, why are you scheduling these appointments? Like, but I was pushing the boundaries. Good or bad. I think it was good. I was connecting. I was CRM people. Their CRM wasn't actually truly what CRM, the title really is. They were connecting.
It's like contact management or something.
That's what it's supposed to be. But they were doing more. They were doing marketing, and not customer. It blended the gray area. They're doing marketing. Anyway, so I would connect with marketing and say, okay, what data? Okay, we got the hotel reservation, so let's get. How do you guys want this? How do we push offers to this hotel reservation? If a guest calls in,
that's killer, dude.
So I was the one that created where marketing team would push in off their offers to the database that I had, and then I would push that data to a website with the call center, their hotel. As soon as a guest calls in, the hotel reservation would pull up my software, and they would search the guest's name, and then they'd say, oh, you have 3 offers. Do you want to stay for 3 nights on this day, or do you want $5,000 free in gaming?
Wow.
Because if they're gambling $100,000.
You give them the room.
So anyway, back to the people that I feel like the people that didn't know their craft, they're buddy, and they just got by. So that's another form of not business fraud, but that was like fraud corruption. Of a person. In a business.
It's like I think it's like
the corporate world is so fucked up.
Dude, I really think, and I'm hoping people of a certain age, call them millennials and younger or whatever it is. I think we really need like this sort of like an ethical revival. Like if you look back in like American history, throughout American history, we've sort of have had these kind of like spiritual revivals. Like you see it in like early 1900s or whatever it was, with like kind of like you had like these guys traveling around in these tents and performing these miracles and like all this sort of stuff. And it's like it's happened a few times in American history where I don't know why, but we seem compelled to like seek out like justice. And I feel, I don't want to say we're special in that way, but I don't know, dude, we put "and justice for all" like on our money. Like we seem really concerned about this concept of justice. It seems like these ideas, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with Sam Harris, and maybe how his thoughts are somehow descendant of the Enlightenment, that sort of pursuit of truth through logical means and not dogma. It seems like in America, that's still so important to us. And it's kind of like this tension that is always waiting to erupt, because we have like this heritage of like erupting for justice. Like you look at like in the 60s, you look at stuff that goes on politically now in the early, like in the early 1920s, you had like the labor movement, like turn of the century and all this sort of stuff. So I almost feel like in a way, from a business perspective, we need like an ethical revival, or like maybe, I don't know if you'd say revival, like an invigoration of ethics. Because a lot of that stuff that you're describing, again, I have realized and stuff, being like a decision maker, now being like a founder of companies and stuff, that ethics flow from the top. You know what I mean? Like leadership comes from the top, duh. But like a lot of leaders don't seem to care about that. You know what I mean? Just like the people who are essentially like criminals who run the government. You know what I mean? It's like they don't seem to care that they're also leading the society. You know what I mean? They're just like want to like go like smash someone on the internet. You know what I mean? Like ultimate clapback or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, tear up Trump's speech. Like, who gives a fuck? There's so much stuff that you could be, you're setting a bad example, especially for children. You know what I mean? Because you're a leader. So in the corporate world, it's like the leadership, the executives, the directors, all those sort of people, they should care about ethics. You know what I mean? And they should try to drive those conversations, and then it will make people feel like inspired. Like, hey, this guy, the director, isn't taking the easy way out. He's thinking about the sort of justness, the justice that we could do to these people and their efforts, and reward them for their merits, and see if we can do something bigger than just being fucking greedy assholes.
I think connecting back to what you said earlier, when we were eating pizza, you said when people are honest, they seem to live the worst lives. Lives. I think, say, take a director, CEO. For them to get into that position, it might have been a 15, a 20, 30-year career. Yeah. And when they get there, I think they've been so worn down, torn down, and they see how corrupt either the company, the corporation, or America is, and they're willing to take their piece of the pie.
I know, dude. You can just imagine yourself if you were at the Cosmo for 20 years, because like you saw it. I think. I think that. Like the thing we were talking about earlier is how people who tell the truth suffer. You know what I mean? A lot. And a lot of times they're eliminated. Like if you look at people who have died that are like important historical figures, like, important historically to humanity, it's like Jesus, they killed his ass. Like Martin Luther King, they killed him. Edgar Evans, he was like one of the civil rights dudes with Martin Luther King. They killed him. Malcolm X, they killed him. Gandhi, they killed him. You know what I mean? Like Edward Snowden, he's exiled. He revealed massive government surveillance fraud. Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil for fear of his life. Bradley Manning, what is his name? Chelsea Manning now or whatever. That dude was tortured by the government. It's, you know what I mean? It's like on and on and on, dude. The list, or who is the guy who they did the documentary about him? Internet's own boy. He's like a major geek or whatever. We should know who this person is. There's a documentary called "The Internet's Own Boy," and he actually committed suicide because he was under so much pressure from the federal government. You know, like when you're a programmer, you kind of realize all the vulnerabilities and all like these sort of powerful applications of technology. And I always think it's really funny. That if you were like a malicious actor, like in your daily life, you could probably like do phishing attacks in real life. They just be like hanging out, and I'm like, yeah, what is your mom's maiden name? You know? I'm like, what's your mom's name? And I'm like, oh, what province is she from? Whatever country? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I was like, what was her original last name? And you're like, oh, blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, okay.
What's like, your Ethereum private key?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, dude. I'm like, dude, where do you keep the cold storage Bitcoin? It's just like so much like geeky. You know, it's like crazy. They're like so much of these systems hinge on like a couple of string of characters. It's so funny. You know what I mean? I don't know, dude. It's the ability, who would know, like the ability to communicate so much, like so much rapid asynchronous communication at scale is fucking scary, honestly.
Yeah. Huh. I don't even know what to say to that. It is scary as fuck. From the information that you were saying earlier, downloading a zip somewhere that has a freaking Excel sheet of everyone, a bunch of people's names, phone numbers, address, their social security, credit card numbers, all that shit online, like
the whole life.
Yeah, I'm sure. I haven't seen it personally. I've heard of certain things, but that's scary to think about it.
Yeah, it's like insane when you start to go down the rabbit hole on some of those things and start to not even like actively try to investigate them, but I mean, you're just like a couple clicks away from like getting it's just like a breadcrumb, dude. It seems insane.
It's kind of funny. I think it's funny. About 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, I was curious on the nature of the dark web and then things around it, just out of curiosity. When I told my cousin I was curious about it, he's like, did you find some videos of some freaking tortured baby, raised baby and all this stuff? I'm like, so I went down towards the dark web. I didn't go deep, I guess. I just started navigating through just to see how fast. One thing was to see how fast it was. It's taken forever because it's like a decentralized search engine and getting the website.
Is it like Tor? Like from a technical perspective?
Yeah, Tor. It's Tor, yeah.
Is that what the dark... I don't know what it is. I just know what Tor is.
I might be in this... I describe that as the dark web, which I'm not even sure is the dark web. I think it is. Tor is because the nature of Tor, it's untraceable traffic because of the way that the
onion router or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a different IP address for each tab, basically, or some crap like that, right?
My understanding, I could be wrong on this. When I read into it, I thought it was similar to how there's RSA encryption on each request and and how it sends the data and where it receives. It's all RSA encryption, so you don't even know your you don't know your destination source, and it doesn't know it's the
requester.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
the requester or response.
So that is the onion router. That's what I describe when I think of how they call it the onion router. I think that's what it is.
Okay, I tell you, do you know this fun fact about Tor, that it was actually developed by the Navy?
I heard that. I don't know how. Yes.
I believe I valued that fact actually. Okay, do you want to know another interesting fact? Is
they're funded?
Well, the Snowden leaks. Do you know what the Snowden leaks showed? I believe this is from Snowden and Glenn Greenwald's work. Is that the NSA tracks anyone who visits Tor's website. They have like the Tor Foundation. They have a specific sort of like a little label they apply to your, like your social credit score account that the NSA is keeping, because it's a special. There's a certain kind of person that's going to go visit the Tor website. Yeah, I know. I know. I saw that shit and I was like, fuck. I was like, man, I'm already checking a few.
I wonder if you VPN through, what other things can you do? VPN.
VPN. Wow, I mean, I guess I would just...
Because once you VPN it down...
You need to get Tor from another friend on a USB disk and then install that.
Yeah.
I guess, it's very fascinating how, they're building that big data center up in Utah, right? For the NSA is to like house everyone's permanent record or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just like... I don't know. It's so interesting because like I used to hear that, like DARPA and all these sort of like semi-clandestine government programs based around technology, that the technology they have is in certain levels, not in scaled application, but at certain levels the technology is 50 years ahead. Like you hear these things like, oh, the intelligence agencies had Google Maps. They had that like in the 1950s or something like that sort of technology. I don't know if that's... the case, but you do wonder when you see things that come out in the private sector, like Google Analytics, and Google is very much pushing, as we head to like a post sort of cookie world, or like a world where you can't have like you go to a website, the cookie has to basically be from that website. It can't necessarily be from another website, which is how a lot of like tracking goes on. You know what I mean? You go to a website like www.mysite.com. But all the software that gets downloaded on your computer is not from mysite.com. It's from othersite.com, othersite2.com. So, they're trying to clamp down on the third-party cookies, that sort of stuff. So Google now is very much working on like identity resolution through machine learning. And that's like a sort of definitely a trend, you know what I mean? There's like building up permanent profiles of individuals, like without arguably informed consent, you know what I mean? And then using machine learnings to identify them through, whatever sort of schema they've developed, you know what I mean? So it's like really interesting that if there are private companies that are, they're like touting these things as features. Like, like identity resolution through machine learning, like, hey, if they come on here and click in a certain pattern, we'll figure out who they are. We'll take their click pattern, and it's all based around statistics. Like we can say with a 95% chance that this is this person based on the way they click, their device, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Based on the records, the lookup in our database. So if that's like a private company that's like out there saying this is what we got, I wonder like what is the NSA doing? You know what I mean? But then I wonder now, I don't know who's ahead anymore. Is it the private or the government? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Huh.
Because it's like, I guess the thing is that I feel like if the private is talking about it publicly, the government at least is probably already doing it. For those sort of technologies that are valuable to the government. Like the government doesn't give a shit about curing cancer.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to help them control people. You know? Like there are private companies out there that are like working on the cure for cancer, and the government's like, yeah, enjoy it, you know what I mean? But the government's like, oh, we can watch people. Let's see what's in the little black box, you know? They're like, yeah, dude, we're on top of it.
I theorize. Gosh, I don't. If Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of them track your data, try to guess who you are, what you do. The worst, it's just the targeted advertising, and not just the advertising itself, the advertising that gets to the psyche, that gets deep in the psyche. So right now, my train of thought is thinking like, so let's take Mercedes. Mercedes makes these cars that makes people want to buy Mercedes. The cheapest Mercedes you could probably buy is probably $40,000, the cheapest, and then it goes up to $180,000 or probably more. Their average is, let's say their average is $60,000, whatever, for the conversation. So they make these commercials where they make people want to buy Mercedes. Is that human nature? I don't know. Is it human nature? Is it how powerful their marketing is? So take Google, Facebook, add that in, and the marketing and how it affects their society to buy more. That seems to be, and then one other thing where it divides our thought with Trump and politics and maybe even religion or flat earth society. you could go into a deep hole thinking flat Earth with Google, and you find a support community.
Yeah, yeah. You find your tribe, dude.
So, out of all that connected, I don't know. I fear that's the worst part of it all. Well, I guess my cup half full from that is I think they're just collecting data to market. The cup half full is I don't think they have a deep plan to like, hey, let's turn humans against each other. Let's turn on AI and let's kill everyone. I don't think there's a deep plan. I think it's just all about money. So
money. But it's so funny though. People will do things for money, like turn people on each other to kill each other. I think it's interesting. I don't know if you remember this. We keep talking about the Snowden leaks because we're geeks. I think I know I bring it up a lot. But do you remember from the Snowden leaks Operation Prism? Okay, so Operation Prism is basically like the NSA has a direct, like they're just querying the database from like everything that Facebook, Google, Twitter, Snapchat, Pinterest, like there's a chart in the Prism component of the Snowden leaks where the NSA, like some fucking genius, because it's like the banality of evil, like with the Nazis. I'm not comparing the NSA to the Nazis. I'm just talking about how I'm using an extreme example of people putting something on paper that you're like, why the fuck would you put that on paper if you know that if it gets out, you're going to get in trouble? But it's like, you have to document in order to manage these resources. So it's like the stuff like the Nazis, like the banality of evil, just the sort of clerical work to keep the Nazis running. You're just like, they're putting this stuff down. Why would you put that down? You know what I mean? You're going to get found out one day. But like some guy, the NSA or a working group, worked up this chart for Operation Prism or whatever it's called in the Snowden leaks. And like the chart is just like basically like, it's just like charting like the year that each of the major tech companies came on board with like sending data about everything that's going on at their company directly to the government. Like, I mean, just like a 1-for-1, like you post like I love fucking swimsuits on your Facebook, and the NSA immediately it gets a carbon copy on their servers. Like the chart is so interesting because I think it starts like in 2009 or something crazy, or like sooner than that, even like 2006 or something. And it's like crazy to see how quickly all of these tech companies come on, like as soon as possible, like as soon as they like reach a certain capacity, they come on board with the Operation Prism program and start illegally sending the fucking data to like the NSA. So on one hand, I think you're right 100% that their motivation is based around like dollars and cents. Like they want to get rich, and who can blame them, right? But there is this, seems to be, if you look at the companies in Operation Prism, specifically that graphic or whatever, if you could find it and show it, or I could find it and send it to you. It's just strange that it seems to be like a standard business practice to work with the government, sending private information to the government. You know what I mean? Like how it kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about, like the corporate state. You know what I mean? Like how there's no company out there resisting. Like when you look at this fucking chart, I think like Reddit is on there. You'll have to confirm that. Like newer shit is on there too, like Snapchat. That's why it's so funny when I like TikTok. It's so funny because it's like, the Chinese government is getting that data, dude. Of course they fucking are. You know what I mean? Like there is some kid who is going to be president one day, or he's going to be a congressperson one day, and he's putting shit on there, and he's like sending DMs and stuff like, hey man, sell me the bag of cocaine so me and my friends can do all these drugs and drive. And you know what I mean? That the Chinese government is just going to throw that in his face 40 years from now when he tries to run for president. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's just like, even though it's motivated for money, I guess my point is that ultimately it seems like there's some sort of like unethical. It's I guess you know what I mean. But it's just so interesting that it's just like a matter of business practice. Like you get big enough, you're going to be working with Uncle Sam. You know.
I think from a ethical human
centric or whatever,
human personality, human psyche. I think so. Take government, take corporations, anywhere in there, humans have a bit of free will, and they will always go towards selfish greediness. It seems inevitable. I think it's a human trait, and I don't think it's something. I guess I'm thinking so darkly about humans. whether it be corporations or government, I don't think there's a way to make a incentive to do better. Really, I don't think there's a way to make an incentive for someone to always do better as they progress through life, through corporations, through government. That's
so. So is it kind of like the? I mean, I wonder if it's the kind of progress that they're making, which kind of like the idiom, "absolute power corrupts absolutely." You know what I mean? Like kind of like we were saying, it's like when you reach a certain magnitude of access or management of a resource, like if you're like Bernie Madoff and you have $10 billion or whatever, and there's no sort of like check on you, like no balance, you just like as a human being, like you're saying, like I don't think necessarily that Bernie Madoff is evil. He just like lost his fucking mind.
I think it's I think it's as high as Bernie Madoff, and I think it's as low as just somebody working at a corporation. So see, when I worked at, and I saw so many people there getting paid so much, even people around my level, they're database admins, data analysts.
Those database admins do some legit shit, though.
Some of them do, though. Some of them didn't.
Really?
So when I looked at how much they were getting paid and how little they did, I like scratched my head, like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, you are just a piece of meat in a seat, and you just get paid to absorb calories. Like, you get paid a salary to come here and barely do anything. And sometimes I see you fuck up more than help. And you're getting paid how much? So anyways, I think some of them, I don't know if they realize it. I feel like some of them did. I actually, now that I think back, I don't know if they were just selfishly greedy and had no concept of their surroundings, and they're just, well, I get paid to do this, so. Yeah,
I wonder if
I want to say I felt like freaking 80 to 90% of them.
This is dead weight, dude. There's a lot of dead weight.
80 to 90%, I think.
This has been exactly my experience as well in corporate America. Just like everywhere, anywhere that you like. In a way, it's kind of like why the marketing on the front end, like the logo and like the kind of warm and fuzzy feelings that people get is so important because it's always such a shit show behind the curtain. Like it seems like no one fucking knows what they're doing. Like it's just like, I think a lot of it boils down to, again, it's like leadership, dude. I think good leadership is extremely rare because people have that sort of, like you said, like I guess I felt like kind of what you were articulating was about self-preservation. Like everything is about fucking self-preservation, you know what I mean? It seems to be a very natural human instinct that is driven by fear. It's like, I don't know if every human doesn't feel love, but every human feels fear, I think, in some aspect or another. And it seems like that seems to be true for like all sentient beings, like things that like can see and like touch. Like they know to be afraid of dying and be afraid of harm of some kind. And for humans, it manifests in that sort of fucking selfishness that just drags like things down. And it's like, it's just so interesting. Like, how do you mitigate against that? Like, you have to make like a system where the cynical choice is the moral choice. But you also don't want to crush like you don't want to crush freedom. I think people should be free to be pieces of shit, honestly. I don't know what to say up to a point.
You could be a piece of shit as long as you're at least pulling your weight. Then that you wouldn't be a piece of shit.
That's like what we have right now. I know. It's like, there's a thing called the Neurohacker Collective, and I wish I could remember the guy's name, Daniel something or whatever, I believe is his name. But yeah, he talks, he's like a tech guy that he also sells like neurotropics. I don't know about the veracity of those things or if they actually do anything. Do you know what neurotropics are? No. It's like, I guess it's what some people in some programmers take, and so he is a programmer who like had some successful company, and now he's like hawking these neurotropics. It's just like, it's like brain pills. It's like steroids for your brain. It's supposed to help you. I've heard they suck, and it's just like a bunch of coffee. I don't know, but some of them could be valuable. I think Joe Rogan actually sells a neurotropic Onnit. Have you ever seen him wear Onnit? He wears like an Onnit shirt, Onit, like I'm on it.
Not that I remember of, but
yeah, I think that's a
keep an eye.
neurotropic, basically.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just supposed to be like steroids for your brain, basically, like brain pills that you take to make you better. But all that aside, he is like kind of concerned about these like existential questions of like ethics and promoting ethics systemically, which I appreciate those conversations and the way he articulates it. And one concept I really like that he discussed, which I'm probably not getting 100% right, but he talks about the concept of like creating like a balance sheet of like the environment. You know what I mean? Because right now we don't really have an accounting of the environment. We have like a system, right, which is like essentially like an industrial system, right? We don't all sit around farming and subsisting, right? We all are specialized in a modern, technologically driven, industrial, materialist economy. You know, we got to go take shit out of the ground and turn it into computers and stuff. So, that's been the evolution of the humans in the wealthy world. But where we are now doesn't really take account of a lot of things we should. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have a full balance sheet of the environment. Like how much water is in the ocean? Like how much oxygen is in the environment? Like how does producing 6 million vehicles a year in a province in China affect the amount of water, the level of water in the ocean? Like it seems like it's shit that we should like be on top of, like we should know, but we don't have that balance sheet. And a lot of that boils down to looking at externalities, which is like just means that like when you have a company, like you had like the Bikini coffee shop, and you like have a bunch of cans and like filters for your coffee and all that shit. After you're done selling the coffee, you take all that stuff and you throw it in the trash and you don't think about it, right? So that stuff that gets thrown away is like an externality. Like there's a cost there, an environmental cost, but we don't quantify it. But it's external to your value calculation. The way you calculate value is like what I buy the coffee for minus what I sell it for is my margin. You know what I mean? There's no accounting for the externalities, that shit that goes in the trash and you never think about. Yeah. So yeah, thinking along those lines of ethics and stuff, even though he talks about the environment, it is interesting, like we can't develop like some sort of like ethics quotient or some sort of score, but it starts to get into creepy like social credit score territory. Do you know what I mean? But some sort of accounting or at least like principles of self-accountancy. Where we can ask ourselves questions like, did I do good today? Did I do good to this person? What will this person's life be like when they go home today to their family or their friends? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like shit that a lot of times you don't necessarily ask yourself when you're at work. You're just like, fuck this guy. And you send it, you know what I mean? You send like a shitty email. So I those are interesting ideas to me.
I think I'm gonna switch topics to cryptocurrencies just for the heck of it.
All right, let's do it.
So I've been doing Ethereum 2 for like so Ethereum 2 just started on Tuesday.
Okay.
I'm gonna pitch you on your psyche to incept the idea that you should buy Ethereum.
You already sold me.
So Ethereum 1 and Bitcoin. I kind of call Bitcoin like blockchain 1.0. Ethereum I call 2.0. Bitcoin was just the blockchain consensus. It was just a consensus on a blockchain. There wasn't really any programming layer. So Ethereum brought a programming layer where you could do smart contracts and things like that.
Interesting.
Ethereum 2.0, I want to call it blockchain 1.2. I don't want to quite call it a 2.0 because it's still using the blockchain. There's still a programming layer. The only thing that they're switching is the mechanics on mining and staking. Mining is hardware GPUs that do the processing to make it very difficult that not one entity can easily hack the network. Mm-hmm. Staking is actually taking, if you have X amount of ETH, which is their currency, so if you have to set up one staking computer, you have to have around $14,000 right now, and you actually put your 32 ETH was equal to $14,000 into that staking computer, and it sits there and does transactions. If it tries to cheat, you will actually lose some of yours because other people on the network will say, no, you just try to validate a wrong transaction. You're lying to us, and you will lose some of that money. But if you do it right, just like mining, you propose a block. If you do it right, you get a little bit of a transaction fee. In the staking, you get that transaction fee. If you validate a block and it's right, you get a little bit of the money. So mining was Ethereum 1.0. Ethereum was blockchain 2.0 in my opinion, with adding the programming layer, but they had mining. So now Ethereum 2.0 is proof of stake, which is so it's much faster.
Interesting.
But there is the biggest thing that I fear for if it does happen, which is the beauty of I'm gonna make the statement and then I'm gonna say something that I don't think it will happen. If someone owns, there is a theory of 51%. If you own more than 51% of ETH, then you could hack the servers and have enough validators to say, I agree on this transaction, even though it's a false transaction, you own 51% of the network.
Wow.
So you own the majority of the democracy of that system, so you are the winner and your transaction is right. There's a lot of, it goes deep. Some people, some of the people who are working deep on this, they say actually technically it's higher. It's like 60 or 70% you have to own the staking network, blah, blah, blah. But I'm gonna even take it further and say, I don't think it'll even reach that, because for someone to own 51% of ETH right now, you're talking about, I think it's, I might be wrong. I think it's $60 billion. So you have to own, you have to risk $30 billion to take over the network. So I don't think it would happen. Anyone in their right mind that has $30 billion isn't gonna go risk it, buy a bunch of the Ethereum, hack the network, and risk that you tank the network. If you go in there and people find out that you hacked it, the value is going to, because it's a supply and demand. Ethereum's going to tank and crash. So the person who just risked 30 billion owns, they still own, they're screwed. They still own 51%, but that 51% that was 30 billion now is probably worth,
what, I mean,
probably like $100,000.
Yeah, is it worth anything? Because like you've lost the integrity of the system.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of like mutually assured destruction or something.
Basically, that's the beauty I love about blockchain consensus. It's mutually assured destruction. If you don't you will benefit more if you work with the system. That's the beauty of
fucking genius. Yeah,
it's like built into blockchain, because you have to, whether it be mining, you have to put in an effort to mine. That costs electricity, hardware, proof of stake. You're forking out your money. You're risking all your money in the stake to be a part of this network. So that's just to be a staker. You don't have to, you could just buy coin and hold it, because I think Ethereum has the best chance of becoming more than Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin doesn't have a programming layer. I think that holds it back.
That's so interesting. Well, you finish your thought. I mean,
Bitcoin built back in 2009. I don't think Satoshi Nakamoto was thinking about having a programming layer. It was the first of its kind.
Yeah.
So just having the blockchain itself was...
It's like proof of concept, basically. That fucking blew up.
Yeah. So now you have Ethereum 1.0 and then Ethereum 2.0. You got speed from proof of stake, where I think the speed, I hope, this is nobody... I don't know if anyone could predict this right now. The speed at less than 12 seconds, if not faster, on some of these things, it could start rivaling Visa credit card transactions, meaning the speed of it. So that's where I think ETH 2.0 really... Now, there's arguments that it gets close, but it's not... It can't... Some people will argue that it can't reach the speed of Visa credit card global transaction speeds. I think it's not far away from it. I think you could add on, there's things called Lightning Network, so there's a build on.
I know you maybe don't even necessarily understand.
I don't fully know. I don't know.
I have no fucking help.
So they implemented this Lightning Network on Bitcoin and on Ethereum 1.0, but there's still issues with Ethereum speed-wise, Ethereum 1.0 and Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the slowest. And then Ethereum 1 is faster, but still not super fast.
What is the difference in speed? Because I feel like one of the major things I hear from people who are into crypto is like, you fuck the banks. Like, well, I mean, there's much more to this entire ecosystem than speed. Do you know what I mean? It's like, would you wait like an extra 5 minutes buying your coffee if you could stop like endless fucking oil-driven wars? You know what I mean? It's like, I would wait 5 minutes extra. I'm like, oh yeah, fucking we'll talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
At a high level, people will quote block times, but block times I don't think is indicative of the real world usage of it. People will say Bitcoin has a block time, I believe, of 2 minutes. Is it? Ethereum is a block time of 14 seconds.
That's pretty good.
But the real world, what happens is, say you do a transaction through Coinbase, the big cryptocurrency exchange. What will happen is Coinbase will wait for Bitcoin. I think it's I want to say 60 block confirmations. So they will wait for 60 Bitcoin miners to confirm that transaction. So even though a block takes 2 minutes, the amount of time for 60 miners to confirm it may take up to, I forget the number. I'm going to say about 30 minutes maybe. So that's not a good time. So realistically, even though, so they say 2 minute block time, but it's actually 30 minutes of confirmations.
Interesting.
I think Ethereum at 14 seconds, I want to say it was a 2 minute block time, 2 minute confirmations where you're going to get about 70 confirmations about 2 minutes. So that's still not good enough for Visa. Proof of stake with Ethereum 2.0, it's theoretically possible under 12 seconds. So that's where when you're bringing up that topic, I think that's where that's where my money, my horse is. That's where I'm betting my horse.
Your literal money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
But so to take it to ETH2, I think their speeds is faster. The only thing I'm afraid of is a whale coming in taking 51%, which I don't even think that would happen. They'd have to risk astronomical amount of money. Who would risk that amount of money on
you'd have to be like a mad. I guess like what's like the payoff is that then you get to control the chain, but ultimately because of the scale, that's going to be found out.
Have the scale, and then soft fork would happen. So what would happen is say that whale comes in, and in proof of stake, I actually don't know if it's exactly 51%. I hear some people say it's up to 60, 70, 80% you have to own before for you to actually falsify a transaction, nobody to notice. Anyways, a soft fork would happen. What would happen is, say that rich person who's a amazing programmer, because they'd have to have 51 up to 80% of the network control and stake. They'd have to program the code to say, hey, when this transaction comes up that's a fake transaction, that in this wallet's $5, but you're going to give me $2 trillion. So someone would have to have the money, have the programming experience to do that. What would happen is a soft fork. A soft fork is an automatic situation where say if it's 51%, that whale has 51% of it staked. The 49% will disagree. The 49% will automatically soft fork. From my understanding, what will happen is the network will divide. There will be a fork. That's just the nature of cryptocurrency, of blockchain. The consensus. Your consensus. You follow what your mining software or your staking software is programmed for you to do. So this person altered their code and they tried to fuck the system. Now they're going to be on their own chain, and this new chain of 49%, they are the new 100% of their ecosystem. And this 51%, he's 100% of his ecosystem. But the majority of everyone should be going this way. So that's the beauty of consensus. I fucking love this shit.
It's so powerful. I agree. It's like really interesting because it does make it's so funny, that guy, Daniel Schemberger, I don't remember. The guy who is like, he is part of the Neurohacker Collective. He also talks about like rivalrous games, meaning that like a lot of times games that humans play throughout history and in modern times are like zero sum. So like zero sum games mean that if I get 100, you get 0. If you get 50, I get 50. If I get 20, you get 80. You know what I mean? If like we're looking at 100%, basically. So it's like a zero sum. What I get takes away from you, and what you get takes away from me. So I'm incentivized to hurt you and help me. So those sort of like rivalrous games create a lot of that like externality BS, which is like, you're like incentivized to like go get if you're a business, you go get your stuff from Costco because they've got the lowest prices, and then that's all you care about because you want to outcompete your competitor. But then Costco gets their crap from China. That ends up hurting small businesses. The Chinese people, or the government enslaves people. It's like there's this whole set of externalities that are not factored in, but with an ecosystem like cryptocurrency and like the concepts you describe, it's not zero sum. It's like if you do the right thing, you get rewarded instead. You know what I mean? Like, and actually, if you try to cheat, like you get fucked. You lose your 60 billion goes down to $100,000.
To just attack cryptocurrency just for the fun of it, to play devil's advocate. People call it a Ponzi scheme, which I could understand their point in that. Meaning, the early adopters say if I bought $10 million of ETH, that probably wouldn't be a good example. Say I bought $500 worth of ETH. That's $500 worth of ETH. Say I bought it 5 years ago, but the price of Ethereum back then was probably like $1 a coin. Today it's $600 a coin. So my $500 is now $3 million. I don't know.
More, like a lot more, basically.
Yeah. So the Ponzi scheme, kind of what people are saying as well, because if I bought that early, that much, and someone buys it now, I have so much money, but they bought it. They're buying for so much more expensive, so it's a Ponzi scheme. That I understand that. Do you see the?
I mean, I guess more. That seems to be like one layer of logic above. I guess I'm concerned at the layer below, which is like, I guess this sounds dumb. What is making the value go up?
Supply, demand, speculation. Speculation is probably the biggest. So I theorize it's a bunch of people with a lot of money that are just speculating like the stock market, but this is an unregulated market. So I think the price goes up from speculation. Like, for example, the price of Ethereum was like, I want to say it was like 200 something like 6 months ago. And it's just been going up because I think people are speculating Ethereum 2.0 release. So people started buying and all the word's getting out and people are buying. Some people speculated Bitcoin is halving, I think this month. So I forget if it's this month. So halving is when the miners, there's a certain time set in the mining code where less Bitcoin is released per mining block. It's just part of the mining code. It's been it was part of the code since the beginning to some, and I don't think they changed that since the beginning. So when it has, people are like, oh, there's less Bitcoin coming out, so let's buy more. I actually don't believe that. I don't believe that affects people. A lot of people say it does. I don't think so. I theorize this is speculation on ETH 2.0. It could be PayPal added cryptocurrency purchasing through PayPal.
Interesting.
So that could have brought more eyes into cryptocurrency and easier to buy, which I actually don't think buying through PayPal is a good choice. They're a custodial exchange or whatever. They're not even exchange. When you buy Ethereum or Bitcoin on PayPal, you don't get the private key. They hold it. So
fuck that. That's retarded.
You're buying
buying the right to access the key from like
not
PayPal,
even,
basically.
You're buying the right. You're buying the right to have the value when you cash in or out. Meaning, if you buy it at $600 and it goes up to $800, you could sell and get $200. You're buying the rights to that, but you actually don't own the coin.
Fuck? Fuck that.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, that's like intermediation. That's the
That's the whole point.
The whole idea is disintermediation.
But
that's hilarious. Fucking Elon and fucking what's his name, Teal. That was their company.
I would say from a adoption or people that don't understand cryptocurrency, I would say it's a good stepping stone into cryptocurrency.
It's like vendor lock-in, though, isn't it? Like there's no
it is
portability.
Correct. But for people that right now, the state of cryptocurrency is super complicated. Like I think cryptocurrency is in its infancy, like the internet was in the 90s. So hopefully, with due time, there'll be easier wallets and easier things connected to phones. Which there's quite a few wallets out there where you get your own keys and your private key of your wallet, and you put it in an app wallet. Where that app is open source, so you know it's not taking your keys, or you could read the open source, and you could transact. And you open up the wallet, someone else has a QR code on their phone, they open it up, you could scan it, and you type in how much you send them. It's pretty cool, but it's still, that's one of the better things, but it's not used enough, and it's just the state of cryptocurrency.
So, yeah, it's so funny. Like, I think you are right that crypto is complicated from like a dated, maybe not a dated, like the bootstrapping, the startup process is like, oh my God, I got to learn this and that. And it seems like I know, even though I haven't really dove into the world, when I look at the content out there, it's like a deluge of bullshit that like everyone wants to, like, I'm a crypto hacker specialist guru fucktard. You know what I mean? Like everyone is like selling something known as being like really trying to help people, which is ironic because like you said, like the speculators create almost like a unethical culture around like trying to sell people on different fucking coins. It's like really confusing. But like, what is the so is Bitcoin is like a store of value? It's like gold basically, and then ETH is like also a store of value, or like
any cryptocurrency can be considered a store of value. I think the common trend is to call Bitcoin a storage of value like gold, but I look at it from a technical side. Bitcoin, the white paper or the cryptocurrency Bitcoin was released in 2009 with programming and programming a blockchain back in 2009. This is 2020. There's so many things that are changing. Proof of stake, proof of work, proof of there's so many proof of storage, there's so many things going on. So Bitcoin was programmed back then, and I think it's to me, I consider it MySpace, and there's soon to be Facebook. I hope Ethereum 2.0 is Facebook and will make Bitcoin look like MySpace. I'm gonna get, if I post this on the internet, a bunch of haters, but look at the code. Look at what the code of Bitcoin, how fast it is. Maybe you could add in a Lightning network on Bitcoin, but you're looking at a system that eats up more electricity than Ireland. The network of Bitcoin, all the electricity.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
All of that electricity is all coal and natural gas too. That's fucking terrible.
So moving to proof of stake with Ethereum 2.0, I think was a smart idea. We'll see if it pans out. The only thing I'm afraid of is a whale, but like I said, I think a whale has to come in with 30 billion. 30 billion
or 60 billion.
Here, let's take a look at it.
Yeah, there's like crazy disincentives to go down there. You'd have to be like a Nero type character, like you like access, like access to incredible resources and fucking like insane.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that a person who has somehow found a way to cultivate $30 billion or $60 billion would think that that's a rational decision. You know what I mean? Unless there's too many covariants to have to manage, you know what I mean?
So Ethereum is number 2 under Bitcoin. It only has 70 billion. So someone would have to have 35 billion to try to take over.
Jesus, yeah.
Now, granted, Ethereum 2.0 proof of stake right now is in it just got released, so there might only be, I don't know how many millions of dollars in there. I think it's 1 million times 600, 1 million, that's 600 million. So you'd have to have $300 million right now to take, because Ethereum 2.0 is new.
Okay.
So there's only $700 million. Did I do the math right?
I have no idea.
600, 1 million. So it's $600 million. So you have to have 300 million. I think you have to have $300 million to take over more than $300 million.
If I had $300 million, I would go out and buy like $200 million of water rights.
I'm not going to be fucking with, if I had $300 million, I'm not going to be fucking with Ethereum.
No, dude, I'm like, I don't have this fucking pet project for $200 million. No, I'm going to go out, I would buy all the water rights up, and then I would start creating financial products on top of the water rights, dude.
I'd be, if I had, Even if I had like 2 million, I'd probably I want to go towards Mars and Elon Musk, only because Elon Musk is taking it he seems to be the only person I think in the world that's doing something greater for the greater good of humans.
Yeah.
No, not. I said that's too strong of a sentence. He's doing something that I think is pretty fantastic, and he's one of the few people I would, if I had a couple $1 million, I could retire. I would go volunteer hours at SpaceX. I think I would. I'd be like, hey, knock knock, can I work here for free?
Yeah, they fucking love that. Yeah, I know what you mean. It does seem like his ambitions have like an upside for more than just the people at his company.
Yeah.
Which is like pretty fucking different. I think it speaks to like the crazy sort of fucking big ideas that he wants to accomplish. Yeah, but it's a shame though, dude. I mean, I guess it's a shame that we don't feel like there's more people like Elon. I also think the dude is like pretty good. He's good at PR though too.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with you. I wish there was more good people. I don't know. That's maybe where cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a decentralized, centralized thing where it incentivizes people to be good. It doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It makes doing the right thing the cynical choice.
Yeah.
Which is like, of course you do that. You get fucked if you do. Like, I'm not doing it because I want to. I'm doing it because I'll get fucked.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because it almost is like an inversion of the sort of like correctional or like penal system we have in this country, where it's like if you do something wrong, something bad happens to you if you get caught. If you do something good, we'll see. But in crypto, it's like the opposite way. I mean, obviously, if you do something bad, you'll suffer. But if you do something good, you'll actually benefit. And I guess we're defining good as like something that people in that community benefit from almost universally.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
And to connect
Jedi
that
mind trick.
Yeah.
Seriously.
To connect that with the Ponzi scheme thing, that's where I think when people try to say, well, it's one of the biggest Ponzi schemes out there, and I say, no, well, if you look at it, everyone benefits that partakes. If I happen to be someone that bought in 2015, that was early, I might benefit a little bit more, but everyone still benefits. No one actually loses by partaking in this.
Also, I think the other sort of concept is that, like, I guess it's kind of like saying that, like, well, dude, the internet is just a bunch of people talking. Like, the more people that get on there, like, what does it matter? Like, you were just on there first, so your website's already built, but the more people that get on there, it's a fucking Ponzi scheme. What happens when they leave?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but what happens is when you create that platform and then that sort of connectivity, the networking effect takes over, and the more people that join, the more valuable it becomes because of the sort of micro innovations that can happen and macro innovations that can happen. Like, remember fucking Farmville?
Yeah.
Farmville fucking changed the game. All of a sudden, people will start playing games on their phone, which they weren't necessarily playing, you know what I mean? Like, the... sort of like and maybe that's not a totally good thing, but like the little animated games on the phone, social games and stuff. As I recall it, a lot of that was with, what are they called? Zynga, or whatever the hell they're called, the development team.
Zynga,
like they started doing like Farmville and all that stuff. If you had told someone like that the internet was going to come around and that a bunch of people would get on there and then they would just be able to communicate, people would be like, so what? Like, what is it? It's just a fucking Ponzi scheme, dude. People keep going on there and they're building stuff and there's no, it's like, yeah, dude, you're missing the fact that this is, it's a platform to stand things up on and that you can activate value from that. You know what I mean? It's hard to have a platform to stand on. So I think the Ponzi scheme argument is kind of it's kind of shallow, I guess, or it seems like not appreciating the fact that this technology is fucking wild. Change value without an intermediary. It's never it's never been done at scale that I'm aware of.
I don't think it's ever had. I don't think it was ever possible before.
Yeah, right. To have go on. I'm sorry.
With that, where that goes into, I'm gonna say a center of truth. When you get a consensus that could say yes or no on something, the truth, it opens up a paradigm, and I don't know where the macro changes and our economy or society could be from this. So just take a situation, you get a smart contract and maybe car insurance. You get a car insurance, you got the person, and you get a third party adjuster. adjuster. The person pays through the smart contract. They pay every month. They pay $200 a month for car insurance. They get in a car accident. They file a claim. It goes through the smart contractor or the smart contract. The smart contract. There should be a third-party adjuster that has no side. This is far-fetched world. It'd be this would be in a perfect world.
Yeah, maybe utopia or something.
Yeah, the adjuster would have no side. They would not side. They wouldn't be biased on the car driver and or the car insurance. They would go check the state of the vehicle. They would check information from the cops, what they wrote down about the car accident, who was at fault. They get that information, and then they would judge the adjuster. Is adjuster the right word? They usually who tells
person who says how much money is going to come out or whatever. Damages
so then they report to the smart contract, and the smart contract facilitates it. That smart contract should hold the money from the insurance company. Say the insurance company gets paid $200 a month, and then they should have a wallet attached to it where it's like they have $200 million sitting in that account. So when that adjuster says, okay, car insurance, you need to pay $15,000 to this person for their car because they weren't at fault, or no, because part of whatever
they're owed money.
They're owed,
according to the policy.
So then that smart contract comes through and just pays it automatically. Done deal.
I always wonder though. Well, you're not finished with that.
So this is a thing of truth where this smart contract, that non-biased third party, builds a system of truth, and truth is, I think, so important that people. It's such a simple thing. Truth. It's such a simple thing, and I think that's where it could really change things. But this is far-fetched future. I think for the government, banks, companies to take up on this, it has to change from the fundamentals, from the bottom up.
It's like people have to demand the change. Yeah, well, it's tricky because people are always like confusing, I think, like factual truth with like philosophic truth. Which is like factual truth is like we measure the dimensions of the cup. There's no dispute. We know what the volume is, how much water you're pouring here. It's like no question. Like, philosophical is like red looks ugly on this cup. It's like, well, that's subjective. It's like, why? It's like, well, I had a bad experience with a red cup as a kid, and that's my truth. You know what I mean? So that's like the funny thing is like people, it always seems like as a species, I mean, I don't know if there's any other species on this planet looking for truth. It's like kind of fucking abstract in and of itself. But in terms of facts, right? Factual events that can be validated as having happened, we're always like conflating the fucking factual truth with the philosophical truth. So if we could just get one of those down, it seems like there's huge potential.
I think there's a paradigm shift. That it's kind of like back in the 90s, we had the internet. I had no idea it would lead to Uber Eats. Like, who would have in the 90s? Who would have thought there's going to be a car company that is not centralized? That you could order food, they could bring it to your door. You could order food from any restaurant. It's not you don't have who would have thought that in the 90s?
It seems.
So I think this truth thing could be that paradigm shift. Take blockchain. Take blockchain voting for the president. We saw how. Imagine all the miners around the miners or stakers or whatever computers, the decentralized blockchain. You put your vote online. You have your private key to your identity, and you vote to that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I know.
You wouldn't get Trump saying there's fucking.
Fucking baloney.
The voting was a compromise and all this shit.
I think about that so often, kind of like what we were talking about with like the fraud you see. Again, a lot of, like that fraud, or kind of like disingenuous behavior or unethical behavior that leads to waste of wealth and resources. Like a lot of that is just based around being disingenuous, like being dishonest, not telling the fucking truth. So you wonder how much we waste every fucking minute of every day as like just a human civilization, global civilization on like lies. You know what I mean? Like people waste their life on lies, and it's fucking terrible. Their whole dignity goes down the drain, their well-being for a lie. Sort of like, man, if we could just crack that nut a little bit, you know what I mean? Again,
I think
for different cases.
I think we could crack the nut on just factual truths with blockchain. but it would take a lot of process to get there.
Yeah,
but the human nature piece is still fucked up.
Yeah, always.
That's the piece that people shouldn't be looking at blockchain to fix human nature.
Right.
I think we should be looking at blockchain as just a way to improve our existing systems.
Yeah.
But the problem, the innate problem of humans is still going to exist.
Yeah, what's funny is it reminds me of, I think it was a short story written by Herman Melville called Bartleby the Scrivener. Did you ever read that one? Mm-hmm. Just like, he's like this guy that he goes into this job every day. It's like some job, like a desk job. And one day he decides I choose not to. And every day he keeps going to work, and the boss is like, hey, can you do this for me? He's like, I choose not to. And he's like, all right. And he comes back the next day. He's like, hey, can you do this for me? He's like, I choose not to. And pretty soon, you see all of the sort of things that happen when someone decides that they're not going to buy into the consensus, or they're just going to choose to not participate in some sort of mutual dynamic or resource or belief. And it creates fucking havoc, which is what you see a lot now, which is that people are essentially equating their sort of philosophical truth with the factual truth. And because the philosophical truths are always so different and oftentimes are conflicting by the nature of them, it creates all this conflict, because someone is like, this is the number of votes that were cast for these people, and this is the other number of votes. We did it one time when you voted, you counted. We did a validation when we canvassed them. We revalidated the votes by hand, and then we had a fifth or fourth validation via machine read. We also addressed issues raised in court. We've done a lot of due diligence on this to confidently say, this is the number of votes for this person, this is the number of votes for that person. And like you're saying, the human element is someone could still be like, I choose not to believe this. And you're like, oh, come on, dude. We just spent millions of dollars. But that's that fucking sort of waste, dude, just buy some coats for homeless people for the year. You know what I mean? How many meals does 10 million, the recount or something in Georgia they did, all these people are donating to the Trump campaign, hey, it's your money, do what you want. But at the end of the day, I guess that process has to play out, but it does make you think, is this fucking worth it? That $6 million or $10 million for the state of Georgia to recount, and it's the money just went and then it's gone, and we all knew, we thought we had a pretty good idea to begin with. You know what I mean? So it's just so interesting that chasing that truth is so difficult, man.
Yeah.